Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Yes, the doctor is in. Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, and our show today is Talking Heads. Talking Heads is a platform where people come by invitation only to have their own 30-minute show. During this time, they share their knowledge, their expertise, their successes, and their key learnings to help us be better both personally and professionally. Today's talking head expert is my friend and colleague, Mr. Justin Mirigliani. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Dr. Jacqueline, long time no see.
I know. For people who don't know, we just did a show right before this. You definitely want to go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV, and you want to check it out because Ed Bernstein was just on, and he is a dynamo.
He's unbelievable. Now, if we're using him as a measuring stick, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Well, Justin, I'm so excited for you to be sharing with us today. So I'm going to go backstage and produce, and I'm going to let you have the stage, have the screen.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, I want to, first of all, welcome everybody. It's great to have you here for this Talking Head session. And today we're going to talk about conflict management. And boy, that's a tough one. It's not easy to manage conflict in a lot of different ways, in personal relationships, business relationships, you name it. It's very, very difficult. And just want to fix that camera there for a second. Very difficult to get through that sometimes. And obviously I can't teach a 4-hour class in the amount of time that we have. We're just going to be here for a half an hour, but we're going to hit some of the highlights. So what I like to do is start off, let me just get rid of that shine there. You can see we're having some technical issues. There we go. And I want to share my screen with you. So I'm going to share the screen. And we're going to talk a little bit about this presentation that I have. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go through this slide by slide because A, we don't have the time, and B, this is television. This is not a classroom. So we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna bounce around a bit. So what is conflict? It's a disagreement between individuals or groups where you have opposing positions, and that's pretty obvious. What I find is I don't want to say difficult to understand, but certainly something that we have to accept as reality is really what comes up on the next slide, and that is what causes us to be either okay with or not okay with conflict. And stress is really the number one reason why people do struggle with conflict and managing it in a healthy way. It's easy, very easy to manage conflict in an unhealthy way. And we all do that. Everybody does that. I wish I could tell you that everything that I teach, I follow to the letter of the law. I just don't. I can't. I'm a human being like everybody else. And even when I know better, I do make mistakes. And I'll share some of that with you in this session. But what causes stress? And ultimately, this is really the bottom line is these are the things that make us either able to handle conflict or not. So work overload, we all have that. Right? It's very difficult not to feel stressed out when you have more work to handle than you can. Hostile environment. I had I'll share a story with you. I had a boss, actually a couple of bosses like this, where they had a habit of sitting on your desk and just trying to be intimidating. And that really does not lend itself to a happy work environment for sure. It is hostile. You can feel the hostility coming from that person. So it's something that you really want to avoid if you are a manager of other people. And I've experienced this, unfortunately, several times in business. I've also experienced it as a spectator. I've seen hostile work environments where I'm asked to come and train, and it's just not a fun place to work. Competitive can be a good thing, right? Being competitive could really allow us to tap into the adrenaline that we need to go forward and go into our skills and develop as not only a person but also as an employee. But if it's overly competitive, obviously that is really stress inducing. The environment itself, is it loud? Is it as it says here, poor circulation? Are you unable to feel comfortable? uh, Business reorganizations, of course. When I remember, I went into a humongous pharmaceutical company, one of the biggest in the world, and I walked in to do the training. And when I got in there, I saw everybody pouring out of the offices and just really commiserating together in the common area, and I couldn't imagine what was going on. It was kind of scary. It was reminded you of like a 9/11 type thing where people were just kind of dazed. And it turned out that that day they were acquired by another company. And when I tell you that that changed the work environment, it changed the work environment. And in fact, I had traveled 2 hours to do this training course, and they told me to just turn around and go home. There just could not focus on that for the day. Firings, layoffs, problems with your boss, changes in your own responsibilities, work hours. If you work late at night, that could be difficult. That could be stress inducing. And then the personal things, the death of a spouse, a divorce, separation, death of a family member. And we tend to think about negative things as stress inducing. And they are. And those are all negative things. Death, divorce, separation. Those are terrible things. Injuries, illnesses. But you see, marriage is here. That's not negative. That's a positive thing. But it does induce stress, right? Think about it. When you get married, how much changes? You're no longer responsible for yourself only. You're responsible for you and your spouse. And you have decisions to make, like, where are we going to live? Are we going to have children? If so, how many children? What are we going to do for a living? Can we still do what we're doing now when we were single? Or do we have to find another career that allows us to make more money? Is somebody going to stay home if we have kids? Right? Are we going to have a child in daycare? Can we afford daycare? So as great as marriage is, and I think all married people who are in happy marriages are thrilled that they are married. I am. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't stress that comes with it, and there's not stress that is with it for the long haul. Pregnancy, I mean, it was so exciting. I'll never forget when my wife told me that we were going to have our first child, especially. And it's always the first child that you remember the most when you find out, because that's the first time you're going to be a parent. Obviously, when my second child was born, I was just excited to have a baby. But um, was there stress, more stress the first time? Absolutely. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was going to be like. What if the baby got sick? Would I know it? Would I be able to keep the baby healthy? Would I be able to protect the baby from, outside influences or whatever the case might be? So there was a lot. As excited as I was and as happy as I was, and it's a great memory. Of course, there was stress. Marital reconciliation. That's a positive thing, right? A relationship that's coming back together, but there's stress in there. Addition to a family, well, pregnancy, right? Having a baby. So we tend to think about stress inducing scenarios as being only for negative things. And we have to remember that even positive events in our lives do lead us to stress. And stress is one of the biggest factors. Now, uh, I want to share stories about how I handle stress, and I can't tell you, even though I have these classes and I teach up to the expert level, that doesn't mean that I am perfect or that I am able to do the things that I'm supposed to do. Um, and I think that's part of recognizing that you do have to work on these things. I mean, even if you're an expert, you still have to put the time in. And I'll take you back to last weekend. Last weekend, I was really having some struggles, and there was a medication that I was taking, and then I stopped taking, and there were some side effects from the withdrawal, and just a lot of frustration and having trouble with doctors trying to get them to call in the right prescription and the right amount, and those types of things. And it was extremely stressful. And I'm driving home with my daughter. She's 15 years old, and we're almost home, and I just couldn't wait to get to bed. I wanted to get off the road and just put the day behind me. And I'm driving in the left hand lane, and a car cuts. I mean, just takes a sharp left turn from way out of the on the right hand side, and I had to jerk the wheel, and the car's sliding, and all the stuff in the car. We had food in the car. The food flies everywhere, and the car's almost out of control. I barely avoided the accident, and I didn't even know if we got hit. The car jostled so much I couldn't even tell whether we actually were hit or not. And I was extremely angry. I was angry that this happened. I was angry that my child was involved and could have been injured. And I was angry because I thought the car was hit and this person was trying to drive away. So I chased after them. I wanted to chase after them, not to physically get into an altercation, but I wanted to stop them in case my car got hit and there was damage. I was not at that moment wanting to deal with having to pay a deductible to an insurance company for something that was not my fault at all. And as I did that, I got out of the car. I checked the car. The car was fine. It turns out that we didn't get hit. It just felt like it because we jostled so much. In retrospect, did I handle it the best way possible? Well, we were in the inner city of Philadelphia. It was dark. It was 11:30 at night. I had my daughter with me. Could it have been a worse situation? Sure. I mean, the person I was following could have had a gun and started shooting. My daughter could have been hit. I could have been hit, but more importantly, she could have been hit. So, did I handle the stress of the situation properly? No. Now, extenuating factors were a part of it. So, I try not to beat myself up too much over not doing what I was supposed to do. But my point is that we're not always going to be at our best, and we got to try as best we can. And we're not going to always be successful. Try as best we can to try to mitigate that as much as possible. So, the next time I'm in a situation like that, will I think about the last time? And hopefully I won't be in that situation again. But if I am, I will be more cognizant of what the repercussions could be if I allow my anger and my stress to overwhelm me and to get into a conflict. So that's a personal one. Now, at work, it's the same thing. Do you really want to have a bad relationship with your coworkers? Nobody does. I think that that's something that leads to an environment that is hostile. Can you just mouth off to your boss if there's something that your boss says that upsets you? No. I mean, even the bosses that were sitting on my desk, I had to have some level of respect for them, or at least feign a level of respect for them, to keep my job. I mean, if you say everything that comes into your head, or if you act on every impulse that you have, you're not going to keep a job very long. So there are repercussions to this. But I think if we recognize the stress that we have, and we say to ourselves, look, I'm feeling stressed today because of this or that, or any one of these situations that you see up here, any of these scenarios, I think if we're cognizant of that, we could be better at um, being proactive in making better decisions when we're in a situation where we are in conflict. So emotional reactions to stress. Well, there's fear. Some people have fear. Um, the other night in the car, I did not feel fear. I felt anger, frustration. Um, would I have felt fear if there were weapons involved? Yes, that would have changed it. It wouldn't have been as much anger. It would have been more of fear for my child and fear for myself. Grief, that is a common reaction to stress. I don't think it's as common as some of the others. Anxiety, for sure. Um, One of the biggest anxieties for me is wanting to make sure my main career, what I do is I train people on all different types of classes, including soft skills like you're learning right now. They're usually 4-hour classes, and they include obviously conflict management, but also time management, leading productive teams, all different types of soft skills. And I train computer classes too: Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Power Automate. Too many that I can mention here. And for me, the anxiety happens when either A, I have to teach something new that I've never had a chance to teach before. That always is anxiety provoking. Or B, I have to teach something that I haven't taught in a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. So, for instance, I have a company right now that they want me to teach Microsoft Access. I haven't taught an Access class in probably 5 years. So I will have to go through and practice and try to remember all the things that I learned back then. And I'll do that, but I guarantee you there's going to be anxiety involved. I'm going to have that feeling of, can I really do this? Can I get this done? That's a normal feeling. That is a reaction to conflict. So if we recognize that, we know it's there. Now, what happens physically when you feel conflict? Well, rapid breathing or shallow breathing. We've all been through that before, that feeling of I can't get enough air into my lungs. I feel like I'm about to pass out. Sweaty palms. That's a typical one, right? We all have that. Uh, Sometimes for me, if I'm teaching a class that I'm really nervous about, I could sweat right through my clothes. I could feel it. I feel like I'm pouring. Nausea is a possibility. Tunnel vision. I've had that before where I feel like I can only see in a very uh, small area. Tension, neck pain, pains in your arms and your legs, your blood pressure rising. You can feel that sometimes. It rises so fast, you can actually feel it. I've had the headaches before, pain, just difficulty trying to concentrate. Indigestion's another one. Uh, there was a time in 2007 when my daughter was about to turn one, my oldest daughter, and I was working really hard. I was going to a lot of different places, traveling every day, up to 2-hour rides up and back, so 4 hours in a car, and trying to take care of things at home. And the anxiety of the fact that time was going so fast, that she was going from an infant, all of a sudden I had a 1-year-old, and in a blink of an eye, which she's going to go from a 1-year-old to a teenager, and all those things were weighing on me. And I really struggled with disrupted sleep. It was very, very difficult to get to sleep, to stay asleep. And I had a part there was a time during one of those weeks in 2007 where I didn't sleep for 3 consecutive nights. I dozed off maybe for an hour or two each night, but that was about it. And I just remember driving 2 hours to a location to teach, and how hard it was to stay awake behind the wheel. I must have hit the rumble strips maybe 10 times. I mean, it was just so difficult. And it was the reaction to stress. And when there's conflict, that these are the things that are going to happen. Now, one of the ways to combat this a little bit is to find out, excuse me, what type of style you are. We all have styles of expression, and we have to know what style we are most comfortable in. Now, none of these are good or bad. That's one thing. When you look at assertive, a lot of times people say, well, that's bad. That means you're confrontational, and that's bad. Or aggressive. Aggressive means that you're angry, and that's always bad. There is no good and bad with this. These are just different styles of expression. Now, with that said, most people are not one of the three or two of the three. Most of us are all of the three. At different times, depending on what the situation is and depending on how you feel at that time, what kind of stress you have. So, are you assertive? Now, if you're assertive, it does show that you have respect for yourself and your listeners. And it creates, as it says here, an opportunity for understanding. That's important. You make eye contact with people, you have the right posture, you use I statements. And this is an effective way to communicate with people. But how many of us know, and how many of us are sometimes this person, the passive person? You mask your own needs to serve everybody else. So I'm non-confrontational, and you might hear people say, "I take the path of least resistance." I'm the person who doesn't want to get into conflict at all, so I will ignore my own needs, and I'll allow other people to take control. And you'll see these people, and again, sometimes you are this person. Sometimes you do have poor eye contact, or you're very weak. You're not projecting your voice. You're kind of feeling small. Now, some people don't ever feel this, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of people can see that they have been that way in certain situations. Now, it does send the message that we're inferior when we do this. So the other person on the other end of this conflict is going to see us as the weaker one, and they're going to potentially take advantage of that. So you don't always want to be in this position. You want to advocate for yourself, for your own wants, your own desires, your own ideas. Now, aggressive is completely the opposite of passive, of course. You defend your rights, but do you do it to the exclusion of the rights of other people? That's not good either. What I was doing in the situation in the car was being aggressive, right? I was following the person. I wanted to make sure they didn't get away with committing really a crime, hit and run. I wanted to make sure that they paid for their crime. Now, it turns out that it was not as bad as I thought, but that's what I was doing. I was being aggressive. Marked by hostility, threatening behavior. I mean, I guess a person in another vehicle could think that I was being hostile to them or that I was trying to threaten them physically. I was not. What I was doing is making sure that they didn't get away if I needed them to make a police statement. So, but they might not have known that, right? They see somebody getting out of the car. They might think that that's an aggressive movement. Loud and accusing people and being very rigid. Fear can be a great motivator. It really can. You can really motivate people to do things by fear. But there is a very, very, very short shelf life on fear. Think about the boss who is always angry, always aggressive, screams and yells, sits on your desk, and is constantly aggressive towards you and even other people. Now, at first, they might make you work harder. You might say, all right, I got to get this done because if I don't, I'm going to be in this uncomfortable position where this person just comes out and absolutely tears me down. And that might work for a while. But after a while, it's going to stop working because no matter what job you have, the company that you work for is not the only game in town. You can simply find another job. Now, is it always easy to find another job with the same pay and the same circumstances that you want to work in the same industry? No, it can be difficult. I recognize that. But if you're in a situation where you constantly feel the stress of somebody who is aggressive, you are eventually going to tire of that and either A, stop caring, and then your work is going to suffer because you get to the point where you feel so defeated that you just don't care anymore. or B, you're going to up and leave. For me, the choice was to up and leave. When I had those bosses that would sit on my desk and constantly try to make me feel that I was inferior or that I was in a weaker position, I just kept reminding myself that there are other jobs around, and this is not the only place that I need to work. And eventually I did find another job. So their aggressive behavior ultimately hurt them in the end because they lost an employee who was willing to do hard work and a good employee who wanted to do well and wanted to excel. But because of their style, I went and took my skills and talents somewhere else. And that's what you would do too, eventually. So these are all different styles. They are, most of us are a mix of three. Most of us, it depends on the situation. It also depends on who we're with. Think about the people that you grew up with and how they see you and how they saw you back then. It's very, very difficult for people to see you differently than they saw you when they first got to know you. So anybody who knew me in college, for instance, they see me a certain way. But somebody who knew me in high school might see me in a completely different way because I was really two different people. When I was in high school, I was 14 years old, and I moved from the city in Philadelphia, and we moved out to the suburbs, and I was very timid, very quiet. I didn't really go to dances and things like that. I was really, really kind of reserved, very reserved. I shouldn't say kind of. I was very reserved. So people back then who see me today might still see me that way. But in college, I was a totally different person. I was very outgoing. I went to all the dances. I went to all of the formals, and we went to parties, and we had a good time. So those people see me as a totally different person. It's funny. I was, no, I wouldn't say a conflict, but I was having a debate, let's say, with somebody from high school, and uh, I guess he got angry in this conversation, and he kept calling me skinny. He kept saying, he kept calling me skinny. You're skinny. And when I was in high school, I was skinny. I was 114 pounds when I started high school, and I graduated at 150. So I was a pretty skinny guy. Um, but times change, and I got up to at my highest 240 pounds. So that's almost another body. And I just thought it was funny that he was calling me skinny. Because that's what he remembered. That's the guy he remembered, even though that's not the same person anymore. It's a totally different body than what he's remembering. But so when we're in a conflict with people who we believe find us to be passive, we're more likely to be passive in that situation because we kind of live up to what their expectation is. And if we're in a confrontation with somebody who we perceive believes us to be aggressive, that we're more likely to be aggressive because we're going to live up to the expectation of that person. So that's what I mean by we're going to be a mix of all these different styles. Um, are you going to be aggressive with somebody who, like a grandmother, somebody older? I would hope not. I would think that would be a time to be a little bit more reserved, right? So we got to kind of adapt our style depending on who it is that we're having the conflict with. So approaches. Let's take a look at this. The avoidance. This is the path of least resistance, right? So we can withdraw and deny any problem is going on at all. All right, we're not gonna take any action. We're gonna allow the conflict to continue. We're not gonna even acknowledge it at all. And people who are passive will choose this, the avoiding style. Okay? We are sometimes that person. Some people are that person all the time. Some people are occasionally. The accommodating approach. So we're going to give in to the demands of other people, but ignore our own needs. Now, you got to remember again, and this is so key to this, None of these are right and none of these are wrong. There are 5 different approaches to conflict. And there are pros and cons with each one of them. And I always mention this in a lot of my classes, even the ones, especially the ones where I teach project management. And in project management, project managers are very, very often all or nothing people. Either the project was a success or the project was a failure. And that's it. There's no in between. And rarely in life is something all positive or all negative. And the example I use is a vacation. If I were to go out, I live in the Philadelphia area, but if I were to fly out to Hawaii for a 7-day vacation and it rains on 5 of those 7 days, I might have a tendency to come home. And when somebody says, Justin, how was that vacation? My answer might be, it was terrible. It was a terrible vacation. It rained 5 days. But did it rain 7 days? No. Maybe on 2 of the days, it was beautiful. It was bright and sunny. And we went out surfing and my wife and I went out to a great restaurant and we had a wonderful dinner and we were on the beach and the kids had a great time. Was that vacation all bad? And even on the 5 days that it rained, that's not fun. I mean, nobody wants to have rain on their vacation, but maybe we brought some board games and we played board games with the kids and we were laughing and having a great time in the hotel room. It's not our first choice. It wasn't what we wanted out of the vacation, but we had a great time, even though it was not nice outside and we would rather be doing something in Hawaii. So, am I right to say that the whole vacation was a disaster? No, there were good things. There were some bad things. We missed out on some stuff. And the opposite is true. What if you went to Hawaii and 5 days were sunny and beautiful? You did a ton of stuff. You went up to volcanoes and you went on a helicopter ride and you surfed and all that fun stuff. And you actually can ski in Hawaii. That'd be cool to ski and surf on the same day in Hawaii. That'd be something I'd like to try. But 2 days, it rained and they were just a washout. Well, I might come home and somebody says, how was your vacation? I would say it was perfect. Nothing went wrong. It was great. Well, wait a minute. 2 of those 5 days were a washout. So no, it wasn't perfect. It was a mix. And that's what we got to think about with these approaches to conflict. Some people might be very, very willing to say that one is wrong, one is right, or out of the 5, 2 are good and 3 are bad or whatever. It's not true. They all have their own pluses. They all have their own minuses, pros and cons. Okay. So the second one that we were talking about there, as I got off of that little tangent, was that the accommodating style. We're going to give in. We're going to ignore our own needs, and we're going to just make sure that the other people on the other end of the conflict, their needs are met. Competing. One or both parties take a competitive approach and just ignore and deny the wants of the other side. A person with an aggressive expression style is more likely to choose this approach. This is typically not the best approach when we want to win at all costs. It's a win-lose, right? Either we win or we lose, and that's it. Well, that's not always the way to go. Now, does that mean that this is never appropriate? No, the answer is it is appropriate at times. Should we have laws that not allow us? Should we have laws that stop us from drinking and driving? I think most people would say yes, because if you drink and drive, you take the chance of not only hurting yourself, but potentially hurting or killing somebody else. So I don't think many people would argue that there should be laws against drunk driving. Now, you may get a few people who say, well, this is America, and we have the right to do whatever we want to do. We're totally free. So they may disagree. They may say, well, I don't think there should be a law. I think people should just do whatever they want to do. Now, in my view, and I think in most people's view, there is no compromise on that. There is a win-loss. I think we need the laws to save people from being injured or killed. I don't want to compromise on that. I don't want to say to somebody, well, you know what? Maybe we'll have drunk driving laws on Friday nights, but Saturday, if you want to drink and drive, you can go ahead and do that. I don't think that that's a good compromise. So sometimes, yeah, you want to compete and you want to say there's a right and a wrong, and that's the way it is. Number 4, compromising. Both parties want to find the middle ground and engage in a give and take negotiation. This is the one that's going to lead to a lot of people being happy. And both types of people, assertive people and passive people, may be able to choose this. They may be able to say, you know what, there is some common ground. There are some things that we could agree on. And why don't we do that so that you win some and I win some and we both walk away feeling that we've accomplished something. And then number 5, collaborating. The parties work together to create a solution that they agree on. A person with an aggressive expression style might be most comfortable with a collaborating approach. So it's not so much giving in as it is working together to find the answer. Again, all 5 approaches are okay. There's not one right, one wrong. You might be using different styles at different times. And that's just something that is not always easy for people. Certain personalities may find the competing style to be very difficult. If you're a soft-spoken, laid-back person, that might be tough for you. But all of these can be learned. All of these can be used. And you got to find in whatever situations what works best for you. Okay. So guidelines for identifying personal reactions to conflict. Pay attention to the way you feel during conflict, physically and emotionally. How do you feel? Are you angry? Are you scared? Do you have anxiety? Do you feel threatened? If you don't get the result that you want, how will you feel? If that is something that you really believe in, if there's something that you believe in very strongly and you are unable to find a way to get some of the how do I want to say this? You want to feel like the situation has been resolved to your satisfaction, or at least partway to your satisfaction. That's part of the way that we want to identify how we feel with conflict. Consider the way significant people in your life have handled conflict and how that impacts you. Now, I have people in my life who are more willing to be accommodating, who are willing to put aside their own needs and own wants for other people, and I admire that. I think that that's a good thing. I don't think it's always appropriate. I think that is something that you can consider, but that doesn't mean that always has to be your approach. I do have other people in my life who I've known, friends, who are completely the opposite. They have to win every argument. If they don't win the argument, then they're going to be angry and they're going to really make it a very stressful and uncomfortable night or week, depending on how long the conflict goes for everybody. What causes you stress? What types of interactions cause you to feel stress? Going back to the car incident, when I got home, after rethinking about what I did and thinking about what I could have put my daughter into, there was stress on me because I felt like I made the wrong decision, and I did make the wrong decision. So do I ever want to feel that feeling again? Well, no, of course not. It caused me to stare at the ceiling at 2 o'clock in the morning. So you got to ask yourself, when you've had these conflicts, what has caused you the most stress? And how can you avoid that stress if possible? You know, a lot of the courses that you'll take on conflict management, I think a lot of them miss the ball. And this bulleted point to me is missing the ball. Determine your style of approaching a problem. I don't think you have one style approaching a problem. I really believe that we all have different styles at different times in our lives, depending on what's going on in our lives. Um, One of the most difficult times that I've had in my life was back in 2015. Anybody who's watched any of the shows that I've done before on USA Global TV and radio know that I've had ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2002, and I had it for 12 years. And I think it was my 10th colonoscopy in 2015. And the doctor called the night before, and I missed the call, and I was worried all night long what this colonoscopy showed. I was, in a cold sweat. I didn't know what to expect. And the next morning, I called the doctor's office, and he said his receptionist said he'll call you right back in 5 minutes. So it was 5 minutes of torture, wondering what was going to happen. And the phone rang, and he said, to make a long story short, you have a very highly precancerous condition, and you're going to need your entire large intestine removed, and you're going to have a permanent ileostomy. And as you could imagine, that was something that was devastating. It was something that was extremely difficult to wrap my head around. And 45 minutes later, I had to teach an Excel class. Was I the same teacher for that Excel class? Was I the same instructor that I was a week earlier when I taught the same exact Excel class? Absolutely not. I couldn't remember things. I was stuttering. I had trouble trying to use the computer. Making mistakes, clicking wrong. Um, I was short with the students. I really didn't answer their questions very well. They didn't know why. Obviously, I did. There were extenuating circumstances. So was I the same person that day that I was 2 weeks before? Of course not. Of course not. So when we talk about determining our own style of approaching a problem, you have a style that you're probably most comfortable using, but that doesn't mean that's the only one that you have in the toolbox. So you got and this would be more if we were in a class with people and talking together. But yeah, you could ask these questions to yourself. These could be rhetorical questions. What expression styles have you observed in significant people in your life? We talked about that already. And this is what you want to ask yourself. What types of interactions cause you distress and increase the likelihood of conflict for you? What are your feelings, as we saw on the other slide, of being physically and emotionally? What do you feel during conflict? And describe your approach to conflict. You could do this to yourself. Okay. The value of emotions. A lot of us don't like to admit certain emotions. I think that depending on your personality, sometimes we have go-to emotions. Being a man, who grew up in a inner city with toughness being a priority and manliness being a priority, it's very difficult not to have those feelings myself. And I would say my go-to emotion is anger. When I feel that I'm being disrespected or not valued, or that somebody's taking advantage of me, I don't go to hurt. I don't go to depressed. I go to anger. Um, that's my go-to. That doesn't mean that's the only emotion I ever have, but that's the one that I go to when we talk about conflict. And what causes you to be angry? And as I said, feeling underappreciated or insulted. Nobody likes to be insulted. Nobody likes to be thought of as not good. At the end of all of my classes, I give out an evaluation. And if there are 12 people in a class and 11 of them say that I was a great instructor and I did a great job and they were so happy, they learned a whole lot, but there's one of them in there that says, I didn't get what I wanted out of this. I thought the instructor uh, didn't answer questions well enough. I didn't like the curriculum. One out of the 12, I will concentrate on the one and not the 11. And I think a lot of us do that. And what's my go-to emotion? I'm angry. I feel angry that the person felt that way. I feel angry that they didn't see the value in what I was trying to present to them. Are your ideas not valued? And this is not just work, right? This is personal relationships. If you're your spouse, do you value their ideas? Do they value yours? If they don't, what happens? Do you become quiet? Do you get angry and short with your family, with your spouse or your children or people at work? What are the underlying issues? Why is it that you feel angry when you're insulted? Is it because when you were a child, you felt undervalued, and when you feel undervalued now as an adult, those childhood feelings bubble back up? I think that's a lot of it for a lot of people. So that's an underlying issue, and we have to address those. And sometimes we have to be brutally honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, what those issues are, and admit that they exist. Why did these actions or words negatively affect you? What, as it says here, what nerve did they hit? And again, a lot of it could go back to childhood. If it's you felt like, and I'll give you my own. I mean, again, growing up in the city of Philadelphia, it wasn't really great to be. I wasn't tall. I was very thin. I wasn't really strong. I wasn't a great athlete. And those were things that were highly valued by the kids in the neighborhood. So, if what it did for me personally is it forced me to try to change. I became a gym rat. I would go to the gym and work out, and I blew my body up to sizes that I never thought I would reach. I grew muscle that I never thought I would be able to grow. But and I guess in some ways that's turning a negative into a positive. But even today, I mean, if I feel weak or inadequate, I remember that kid, that 10-year-old kid still lives inside the 47-year-old body. So we have to ask ourselves, why is it that we're feeling these negative emotions? And we'll also have to ask, is it legitimate to give that as much power as we do? If I keep thinking of myself as the weak 10-year-old kid, is that really who I am now? No. So we have to sometimes look at those negatives and just put them in perspective and say, well, yeah, we felt that way at one time, but that doesn't mean we're in that position right now. So the value of the emotions that you feel is really important. Now, conflict has negative connotations. We oftentimes feel that conflict is bad, but you know what? A lot of good things can come from it. First of all, you might not even know that there's a problem at all until there's conflict. Maybe you've been working on a certain project and it's been going on for years, and your standard operating procedure is slow and outdated, and maybe you have new employees that see that, and there's conflict. The new employees are saying, hey, there's a better way to do this. Well, that conflict is allowing you to see that the problem does exist. If you don't know the problem exists, how in the world are you going to fix it? Okay. Reveal hidden truths about your company and coworkers. I think that kind of ties in, right? There are hidden truths about our company and our coworkers. We do have biases. The biased thought is not a bad thing. You can't control the thoughts that pop into your head, but you can control how you react to those thoughts and what your actions are. And that's important. So even when you know that you have biases or your coworkers have biases, the key is to say, yes, I do have this bias, but I want to get through it. I want to be better. And I want to make sure that my actions are not formed by the biases. The conflict leads to better solutions. Right. Again, I think it goes back to what we said earlier with making you aware that the problem exists. Well, once you do, then you will have solutions to those problems. Problem solving, that's important. You get together as a group, brainstorming, trying to come up with ways as a group to solve the problem. Creative thinking. You know, growth happens in the discomfort. That's where growth is, in the discomfort. When you're doing the things that are comfortable and they feel perfectly comfortable, you're not growing because you're doing things that you've already learned. There's no growth there. The growth comes when you have those feelings of it being uncomfortable. And that's where the creative thinking happens. Uncover strategies for change. That's a good one. Having new procedures or policies that improve the quality of the work environment. Conflict, believe it or not, many times can strengthen relationships. I've had conflicts with friends where we didn't see eye to eye on certain things, whether they were political issues or uh, issues with working together, trying to collaborate in a business. And during the conflict, was it fun? No. Did it feel like you're losing a friend? Yeah, sometimes. But oftentimes, it when we look back together on it, it strengthened the relationship and made it better. Right? And that could be with a spouse, that could be with a friend, that could be with a coworker. Right? You want to learn how to negotiate and problem solve. Those are real. I teach those courses too. There, we actually have full courses for negotiation and problem solving. And this conflict allows you to practice those things. Negotiation is important because in negotiation, you're trying to find a solution, and you're trying to find a solution that benefits everyone. When you negotiate, you don't always want it to be a win-loss situation. Sometimes maybe, but in a lot of situations, you want to have some of the things that are important to you happen, and you also want the other person their feelings to be and their goals to be met as well. And that's an important part of negotiation. It doesn't always have to be somebody wins and somebody loses. I help improve communication and redefine goals. What your goals are today, I shake my head sometimes when I hear somebody ask in an interview, what's your 5-year plan? What are your goals in 5 years? Well, my goals might change dramatically in the next 2 years. I'm not. I mean, I have goals, and I think everybody does have goals that they want to reach in their life, and that's a good thing. And I think some of them will never change. But um, redefining goals is okay. Maybe you wanted to write a movie and create a script, and your goal was to get that movie produced. And it's 6 years later, or 7 years later, and you're thinking to yourself, this isn't going to happen. It was a goal. It's something that I wanted to do, but I don't have the money to do it. I don't have the backing to do it. Perhaps you don't have the skills to do it. It's okay. You're not going to be an expert in everything. Nobody is. So maybe you redefine your goal. Yeah, maybe instead of a feature film, maybe you want to work on a documentary. Something like that. Conflict allows you to release negative energy, and this is the really more geared at the person who has trouble with conflict, because if you internalize the negative energy long enough, you build up enough steam, you're going to blow your top. Most people do. And that's not a healthy situation either. Communication is important. It's important to let people know how you feel. It's important to let them know what's important to you. Right? And if you constantly choke it down, you're never going to be able to resolve it. So it's amazing how fast this time goes, and it really does go quickly. But let me just stop sharing here. I wanted to just give you a little taste of what we do, in the course. Again, it's a 4-hour course. It's something that takes time, and I want to thank you so much for your attention, and I want to thank you for letting me be one of the talking heads. And I wish you all the best, and hopefully, I'll see you down the road.